Hello everybody, welcome to this analysis of how you can draft lots of dresses with the same drafting method. Now I apologize, I'm a little bit late because I couldn't go live in landscape. It would only let me do portrait. So you might have seen a few very short streams and me going, oh no, because I don't know what has happened. I've done this lots of time. But for some reason today, YouTube decided it did not like me. Anyway, so let's go back to what we actually want to do, which is look at really nice dresses. And I hope some of you will find me because, of course, none of the links will now work. What I'm talking about today is how, well, I'm trying to find a catchy title for this. It's basically how by learning one drafting method, and I'm actually going to do an in-depth tutorial on that on my membership tomorrow. But today I wanted to actually show you why I love this drafting method so much. It's a real design method which lets you draw your seams, or what I often call style lines, which is probably one of those design terms, but each school has a different name and each company calls it different. By style line, I always mean seams which not only are functional, but they're also very pretty, and they can actually be purely aesthetic. And all these styles basically feature a seam which is decorative, but we still have all the shaping we have on a normal bodice. But basically this method lets you move away your seams from your bust point and still get the shaping. So it's a really good way of a lot of styles we have the seams going through the bust line, but quite often we actually don't want to be restricted by having to go through the bust point. So it's a really great method for that. It gives you a bit more freedom to draw lines wherever you want them to be. This method works equally well with darts, gathers, or pleats or tucks. And the most famous method where this is actually used is what people call a Dior dart, but it is of course used by lots of different people. This is, I think, is a Givenchy, for example, and you can see here they have no lines at all, so they actually move their design lines, their seams, to the waist and to the underarm, and then they have a very short dart. So that's a sort of, you probably have seen that, that's a Dior dart, what they call it, but that basically means you, rather than having like your seams again going to the bust point, you actually move it away to the side. So you can either use this method to create really decorative styles like that, where the seams take center stage, or this one for example, or you can actually use it to get a really plain front without the seams or dart being in the way. So it's a really nice way for all of it. And the reason I wanted to make both an analysis and an in-depth tutorial about, because they're so versatile, and there's also lots of great things you can do on fit, on how much volume you add, and also for different bust shapes. So I'm going to talk all about it. Please do say hello in the chat. I can see hopefully 8 of you have found me, and hopefully others also, because I sent out the link just before everything went wrong, so that will teach me in future. So if you're watching the rerun, you know why everything went wrong. So let's start with this style, which I think Makita suggested on my membership. So if you don't know about my membership yet, I have a pattern cutting membership. I will put the link in the description afterwards, as things didn't go to plan, where I share pattern cutting tutorials. We have a little community, and also the great thing is you basically got direct access to me, and you can also get involved. So I've got involved tier where people can suggest tutorials, and then they can also vote on them. So this was one of the suggestions, and Makita actually loved this fantastic sleeve cape and this sleeve cape, so I'm going to make a separate tutorial for that. But I also spotted the bodice and I thought, oh, that fits in with all the different styles people have shared. So I thought that would be really good. So let's start by drawing this style. This is a really nice style. It's actually got a really interesting neckline, which is a bit drapey. So I think this actually has a very slight cowl neck and a very over top necklace. But this basically is I'm going to draw the over bodice, so the silhouette in black, and then I'm going to draw in our style lines and or seams in blue, and then the shaping in red, just to show you how all these styles work the same, but they all have slightly different methods. So on here, and if anybody has a suggestion on what we should call this method, I originally called it geometric bodices, but that's wrong. But basically you can draw in your seams any way you like, but you can see our original bust point is here. So you don't have to go anywhere near the bust point. And on this style I've added little gathers. And in the tutorial tomorrow, I'm actually going to talk about how for different bust sizes you can play around with this, how you do that second step of recreating our bust shaping again. You can have different options to sort different body types. Also got different volumes. So this is the first one, and then of course what they've done is they added this really nice sleeve, which I'm going to talk about hopefully over the next few days, which is very pretty and very clever and very easy to draft. So my favorite combination. But let me know what you think of this style. So this is like the 1930s style. Then we also had this style, which again, it looks completely different. So on this one, we've got a crew neck. And we have got a shoulder seam. And which is why I wanted to make this tutorial tomorrow in the membership, just to show you how versatile it is. And quite often we've looked at the sort of principle of collars and stuff, but recently we've sort of done more specific tutorials. So it'd be really nice to actually look at the drafting method again. So in here it's really clever because we've done a yoke. So that's your one style line, your seam. And then instead of a seam somewhere else, they've actually added a wrap style. Now, it's probably a fake wrap because it doesn't continue in the back. So you could say that's actually your first style line. And this is your second style line. So these are your sort of seams where you're really designing how you want your style to look, and depending on how you do it, that really is the biggest change. But then your shaping and fitting is done via all these little gathers here. So you can see both these styles use gathers, but of course you can use pleats or tucks. But you can see how completely different, but they're both using the same drafting method. It's still quite similar because we got sort of geometric lines and then we got gathers. Let's have a look at some which go, actually let's have a look at the third version of this first of all. And I think this is a little bit newer dress, but you can see again this is the same method. So in here we've got a really deep v-neck, and then we actually got, ooh, that's a bad drawing, we've got our armholes, and then we've got a long dress. But on here, what I really like is that it's completely geometric. So here the style line actually is an extension of your neckline. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's drawn completely as a straight line, like this. And I think Sharon suggested that, if I'm right in thinking. But you can see, so the style lines here, again, so geometric, but it looks completely different, but it's the same drafting method. And this time again, we're having gathers. Of course, you have little tucks as well. But on here, it gives you sort of a, depending on how you do these angles, I would maybe actually sort of do it more like this. Then you can get completely different looks, and then it sort of has all the gathered sleeves again, flouncy sleeves, so a bit like, but it's exactly the same drafting method, completely different look. Again, this is a silk, then our cotton, different look again, and then of course the original one was probably like, again, like a silk crepe. So you can create lots of different looks, lots of fabrics. It works for all of them. It's always the same principle behind it. And if you move away a bit more, let's up to now it's just basic drafting method where we always create a style line, which can be anywhere. So we're basically having freedom from our bust point, because with the original cut and slash, of course, you always have to do something through the bust point to keep the shaping. So this just lets you move away from that bust point. But then you can start having lots of fun with it. So basically you can either add more volume. I love this style. It's Pinterest, so that's one of the reasons I'm not 100% a fan of Pinterest, is because you can't tell where things come from. So this looks very 1960s to me, but I think it might be newer. Who knows? But it's beautiful. So for our purposes, we're not designing a collection or putting together an exhibition museum where you actually know what you're looking at, or even like a film costume. We can just appreciate a pretty dress for what it is without having to worry, is it really 1960s, or did somebody make it last week? So you can see what's really nice about this. This has got a gusset or a dolman sleeve. You know, for me that's very important. That could be a little strip gusset. Can you see there's a seam here and a seam here, which probably means it's got a gusset going down, which gives you a little bit more freedom of movement. But on here again, so our bust points are properly here, maybe a bit lower. So if I think actually, that's a very strange bust point. And you might actually, I would love to know, do you, because this method, when I first got into designing, I didn't actually understand how this worked. I thought you always had to go through the bust point, and I was looking at some old stuff I made nearly maybe over 15 years ago, and you can see that I really struggled because I didn't know how I could get a seam line away from the bust point, and that's something I really only learned when I got into pattern cutting. So I always, all my seam lines always used to go through the bust point because I knew how to use cut and slash, but I hadn't learned this method yet, which I thought we do a proper tutorial on that, so you know how to use it too. And I should probably do some really straightforward just drafting principles behind seams and cut and slash as well, because I know a lot of you are very knowledgeable, but of course we all started our journey somewhere. But again, on here, our style line, I remembered to use my different colored pen because I cut off my start out, and then I just go slightly off, and then it's very colorful. So you can see this is our style line, so our decorative seam, because it doesn't do actually any shaping. And this method is actually a little bit different. So what they've done, because up to now, we've always, if you look at the other two styles, other three styles even, the volume was always pointing towards the bust point. This one, I think, actually is a little bit different. What you could do, if you wanted to use the same method as before, you would have to move this further down. But I think for most of us, it's going to be above it. So what they've done on here, where it becomes a bit cleverer. So this is part of our volume, our dart shaping. So part of it has been turned into volume, but then and they've also added extra volume. So they used cat and slash. So this is getting a bit more complicated. But then they've actually just made it a little bit wider. So normally our bust dart comes down to here. They have just added a little bit of extra width into it. So this is a bit of a hybrid, but I still wanted to show you. So there you can also use the method, and then instead of gathers or tucks or darts, we just add a bit of width. So it's a bit like a relaxed bodice block, but not quite. So this is slightly different interpretation of the same method, but I wanted to show you. But now let's go for a really straightforward one with a lot of statement factor. And I can just see, let's have a look at the chat. I can just see. Oh, hello everybody. I didn't see your messages, so I'm a bit all over the place. So hello Astrid, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me at 8 or something. And hi Laura, I'm glad you could make it. And hello Beth. And hello Suzanne, I'm so glad you found me on. I only just realized you actually did say hello, because I was feeling a bit abandoned. So I was thinking, oh no, I messed things up today. So I'm glad you all found it. And I do hope you find them, because you are all on my membership. So I do hope you find the message and the tutorial helpful tomorrow. This one again, I think this was by Sharon. But Sharon can tell me off if it wasn't. This is a contemporary one by, I think, Derek Lamb, which is very nice. But this is more straightforward than the last 1960s ones. On here we just got a lovely strappy sundress, which is sort of very, I actually think it's sort of, it could be, again, it's quite a vintage look, isn't it? But again, fabric choices, styling, all makes a difference. Maybe late 50s, early 60s. So what's on here is a normal fit, but then what I love about this one is that you have, again, a geometric style line like this. So this time it's a diamond up. So this is the fourth one. So far we've got like a weird X shape. We had a wrap with a sort of echoey yoke, and we had a proper X shape. And so this time we're having a diamond, so the fourth option. And this time we have our original dart shaping, but this time it's lots of cuffs, not cuffs, tucks. But then they've basically added lots of extra volume. So this is where you can then use your cut and slash, and you add as much extra as you want. And that's something I'm talking about tomorrow as well, in a proper in-depth tutorial about how you can either accentuate it to create a really sort of pleated textured bodice, or if you, for example, really if you're really curvy and you don't want too much extra volume on your bust, you might actually want to accentuate it, or you want to balance things out. In that case, you can actually really design the style lines to get the least gathers you want. And oh, a few more have joined. Hello Yolanda as well, and hello Dietre. I'm so glad you can make it. And Astrid is saying she thinks it's late 60s. Yeah, okay, yeah, but I was thinking it is sort of a little bit, you're actually right. I was thinking it's a bit, it is sort of a slightly yes, it's got that sort of hippie influence, late 60s, you're right. I was thinking at first it's late 50s because it's so fitted, but of course that carried on. I actually think but you can use, yeah, I think it's a style which is sort of, let's call it, it gets repeated quite a lot, because I was thinking Marilyn Monroe, but hers looked a bit different. But I just really like this sort of, it looks like a butterfly nearly, doesn't it? Which makes it sort of quite romantic. So yes. And Astrid said she makes her I think of Woodstock, yes, it does. That's why I think it's a bit hippie-ish, isn't it? I can imagine my mother probably wore stuff like that in the late 60s. This is new, I think. I'm pretty sure the styling is actually very late 60s. I think it's only a few years old, which is why I think it's got very confusing on the internet. It's a Derek Allen. So I think it's more or less contemporary. But everything about it just screams, even the lighting is very late 60s. So where was the real statement one? So we started out with just the basic ones, which is things like this, our 1940s one, which again you can sort of interpret it, because on there you could actually have more gathers or less, or pleats, and then we had the really classic one like that. Then the hybrid here, which I shouldn't have actually included, but I did, just to hopefully not confuse you too much. And then this is a real statement one where we add lots of gathers and we make it a bit more exciting. But now let's finish off with some really just doing the opposite. And I'm actually gonna quickly draw all the styles I've done so far, and then just talk about it quickly how you can change it by using the Dior dart method. And in the tutorial tomorrow I did one with pleated pleats, so for the gathers, but of course you can do whatever. So the first one we had looked like this. I'm just going to draw them all so you can see the difference of how it would look with just the Dior darts. And the great thing with this method, if you're curvier, if you use the Dior, I call it Dior dart, it's if you use the Dior dart method, you can actually really spread as well, so balance the fitting, spread it out. So it's a bit like the double French dart, is where you actually spread out the volume you're creating. Drawing these out of memory, and it's always quite interesting, because even this I got the neckline wrong, because when you start sketching things, you start sketching your own memory rather than what you actually just looked at. So these are our style lines. I'm going to ignore our I'm going to ignore this because that's a bit different, but even if you look at this one, well, it's quite nice here, rather than having a point, it has a little bit of straight one, so it looks different than having a point at the center. And Suzanne is saying the diamond shape, so this one would work in a swimsuit. That'd be really nice. So it'd be like, and again, actually that'd be, you could sort of, if that's, I'm just thinking how you would, whether you would make it a bit bigger then, so it might go down to your waist, and then sort of not go too close to your crotch, because otherwise I think it always looks like a repetition of it. But you could sort of do like the gathers then, like in your stomach area and your bust. The one thing I'm going to actually talk about it tomorrow a bit is on my trial I actually did the angle a bit wrong, and then it can sort of change the look a bit. But I think that's a nice idea, Suzanne. But it's a great thing if you're sketching things out, and of course you can think about it as you're drawing out. And of course all of these methods, as Suzanne said, it would work on a swimsuit, it would work on a top, you can work it on skirts, on jackets. I just chose dresses because it was sort of our loose theme this at this time. I'm not saying month because I'm going into July a little bit, so I don't want to limit myself and suddenly say no more dresses, but we can do whatever. So this again, you can actually have darts. So if you're smaller busted, you can just have one dart, but that actually looks a bit sad. But you could just have 3 darts here, for example, and that would actually give you beautiful shaping, because if you make this the right width, it really sits flat up against your body, and then either darts or little tucks would then really give you beautiful shaping. So it's nearly like a corset but without the fitting, and that actually would be nice on a swimsuit. You can do it by anything, by basically having darts, and the more you have, the more your volume is going to be sort of balanced around your bust shape, especially if you're larger busted. And if you're smaller busted like I am, if you make the tuck discs instead of darts. It gives you a really nice hourglass figure even if you haven't got one. And on here again, if you use darts, you could for example have darts from down here, just have one, so that's quite Dior one, quite 1960s. You probably would in the middle rather than slightly off like I did. But you could have like again like 2 darts, you could have them so slightly angled like that, or you could have one, or you could actually coming from different direction on here as well. You could have it like that. That's something I talk about tomorrow again, because the direction can influence how much volume you actually left over. And again with here, if you have little darts, if you could have sort of 3 little darts or 1. If you have 3 little darts, you basically nearly lose them visually. So it looks like you haven't got any darts, so you only have your style lines, which is nice. So up to these all, like on there, the pleats take the center. On here, the gathers take the center. On here again, the gathers are part of the big look. And here again, they sort of, the gathers are part of it. They sort of part of the design, because of course you don't always want that slightly more voluminous look or volume look. Sometimes you want something really simplistic, like our Dior dart, but we don't always have to do the Dior dart with our underarm seam. We can put it anywhere. So even on here, if you had the darts here again, this area, you can make these lines exactly so they sort of follow. You could even curve them slightly. They can really follow your bust shape, and then you can just have little darts. So it's a little bit like the, was it a Givenchy or Lanvin suit jacket we made a while ago? It's similar to this, but I wanted to make a tutorial just about the method. So you find one tutorial where I actually go through the basics, through the step-by-step methods with 3 steps to them, and demonstrate how they work, so you can then apply that to thousands of your own styles. Anyway, so this is it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed this little journey into different styles, all from the same drafting method. And tomorrow on the membership, we're going to have the full tutorial on membership, and I used the 1930s model, which is this one, and then I've also put a tutorial up how to make the sleeves, which are so similar for both of them, because I thought they'd be really pretty as an add-on. That will go on YouTube as well at some point as a bonus tutorial. But thank you so much for watching. And Astrid just said, I have a vintage pattern example of a funnel neck dress. I'd love to see that. Sometimes I glance through it, and this one is actually a little bit different. I think it's really interesting because on there you actually might use your relaxed bodice block or your so it uses nearly the same drafting method, but you have to sort of change a little bit along the way, so I apologize. It would have been easier without it, but it's a beautiful example, so I wanted to share it with you. But the rest all work exactly the same, and you know, with the choice of pleats, gathers or darts, you know, even if you made this with pleats or with gathers or darts, each of them look completely different, which is what I love about it. So you could even, you know, have the same, if you love that sort of neckline or you love that sort of style line, you can make them, but each time you just change it slightly and you get a completely different look. You know, if that's just black and navy, for example, or just black 2 sides of satin, very elegant, very understated. But then if you used print, and you could use different colored prints or the same print, different colors, you can have lots of fun. But it will look different each time, which is why I love pattern cutting in general and this method specifically. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, and I will be back with a tutorial on the membership tomorrow, and I will put the link for that in the description as well. But for now, if you just woken up, have a lovely day, or otherwise if you're in the UK like Laura and I, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye bye everybody. Bye Laura, bye Astrid, and bye Beth, and bye Yolanda, and bye Suzanne, and bye Deirdre. Thank you so much for joining me, ladies. Bye bye.